Well, welcome everyone. I hope you had, I don't know the word. Maybe August 22nd was the full moon. So it was yesterday for us on Monday here. So, and maybe some of you that are listening to the recording, if you can take a moment to reflect on this weekend and see if you've noticed any shifts or anything that you were able to get in touch with your own inner wisdom. Just tune into that for a moment, because that was a very powerful day. And the next one, it's the powerful day is September 22nd. That'll be the equinox. So a lot of 2/2s this year. And those are numerologically very powerful days. And this full moon felt a lot more grounding to me, but also awakening. So hopefully you had some chance to tune into that. And when you read my email, you were able to say, yeah, maybe I did feel that, or no, I felt this way or that. So just tune into your own answers from that. And I thought it might be good to just drop into your own body today, taking a little bit of time in the beginning, because there's so much going on in the world and in the United States with the major flooding going on, lots of rain. And then the fire, many fires on the west side, especially in California region. So there's just many things to work through in our own individual lives and our individual day-to-day things to do, and how you're juggling this whole issues with COVID as well. School is starting back up in some parts in Colorado as well. So, and maybe in your neighborhood as well. Maybe your children are going back to school, your grandkids or your neighbors' kids. So just take a moment, if you could, send them love as well. And if you can drop into your body for a moment, and this next practice is not for everyone. And I'm going to put the disclaimer before I even go into it. That's why it's important that you actually drop into your own body. Okay. Just drop into your body for a moment and see, do I feel rested today? Do I feel there's a sense of good digestion going on? Do I feel the bottom of my feet are very much in touch with Mother Earth? Do I feel hydrated, connected to my guides and spirits and the support system around me? If you checked off yes on all those, then I ask you, and still you need to make this decision on your own, but I ask you to open your heart fully to so many people that could use your support right now. And what you do is a very simple practice, but so profound that I don't want to recommend this to everyone. You literally tune into, maybe your neighborhood school is starting to open, and open your heart to them. Or maybe you saw the news of flooding or the fires, or, there was a rain actually was it in North Pole? Is that right, Chris? Somewhere there? That happened over the weekend. So there's environmental, global, earth warming up, all that's happening. So if you want to tune into that, that's fine. But what you do is you simply tune into maybe a one or two things. Don't overwhelm yourself. And you just simply become the filtering system for those things. You're not fixing anything. You're not clearing anything per se. You're not changing the course of anything right now, but you just become a little bit of kind of like a HEPA filter. Okay. You're not trying to filter it to clear anything, but just let it go through your heart center. And then maybe you see that moving out of your back, or maybe goes through your filtering system and then comes out of your front. Either way is fine, but just make the circulation or just the movements. That's if you feel grounded, if you feel ready to do this, if you feel like you have enough energy to do this for others. If you don't, just honor and just stay grounded, stay sinking into your own self, dropping down into your own inner knowing. So let's do this for about 3 minutes, and maybe I'll ask Chris to check the time for us. So just 3 minutes. If it helps you to close your eyes, go ahead. If you're looking down just a little bit, if that feels more comfortable, that's fine. But I would recommend that you begin to not look at the screen, begin to quiet down the information that's coming through your eyes, and wide open heart space. Just focus on maybe one area that you can tune into, if that feels okay for you to do. You're letting their sadness, their shock, their grief, their exhaustion, and their disconnect, and maybe fear, let that just come through you. You're not here to fix anything. It's going through your HEPA filter of your heart center. And you're just breathing out. Inhale. And then simply exhaling. There's nothing for you to do except to be wide open in your heart center. Remember, you're not fixing anything. You're not even sending light or love. We're not doing anything, any of those things. We're just this kind of a HEPA filter. And at the end of the 3 minutes, I'll have Chris ring the bell. Coming back to your focus. You're only working on wide open heart. That's it. And in any moment or any time during this 3 minutes, you feel that's all I can do today. You honor that. You honor your boundaries. You honor your decision. And just coming back to dropping into your body. We're not looking for solutions. We're not fixing anything right now. And stay with it just a bit longer. Let's stay with it for another 3, your own rhythmic breath. And before returning to this group in this Monday call, take a moment and pay attention to your heart center. Bring in the energy. If your heart center opened up wide and maybe too wide, sometimes we could get too wide. Bring them in, calling them back in. And I imagine that I have maybe a silk white silk scarves just wrapping gently around my heart. I can see through it still. I can feel the breeze, but not raw or too exposed. Good. Slowly coming back to this space, letting the light come inside your eyes. Slight smile on your face. It's easy. Your corner of your mouth just goes up a little bit. They go up a little bit towards the heavens. That's all you need to do. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking that time today. Because I think about it, how fortunate I am to be able to show up on these Monday calls and be with all of you. There's so much to be grateful for. And if we could spend even just 3 minutes or even less, maybe not every day, but recognizing that and opening the heart. But then make sure that you take the time to, like I said, maybe silk scarf or something to bring your heart back in to your own space. And that's important. Okay. So I will pause there and maybe Chris has something to add.
While we were doing that, I was taking a look at my hands, and some of you may have become familiar with this kind of a practice before, but just by looking at your hands, you can learn a lot about what's happening in your body. And so for me, it's been a pretty active day already, and I noticed that my hands were kind of clenched. So I had to consciously relax them. And I noticed that one of them was even had a little bit of a shake to it, as if I'd been gripping something. So I had to relax that too. And that's something that we do. We hold what's happening in the world and in our day-to-day experience in our bodies. So just bringing that awareness back to, as we get into our topic today, just feeling where your body is. Are you holding tension somewhere that you can consciously direct your awareness to and release it? Your hands are a good place to start. And maybe that's enough for you today.
Thank you, Chris. And I wanted to just quickly go over, and I'd love to hear in the chat as well, what was your, maybe the weekend like? Did you take the time to cherish the full moon? Did you take some time to become aware of your own inner wisdom speaking to you? And some of these insights that I received were truly nothing new, to be honest. My mind was like, well, yeah, of course, life is short. But I literally had tears coming down, and I shared it with Chris, and I said, wow, life is really, really short. And I was looking around our living room where I have some of my dad's collections of art and maybe pottery and whatever we could salvage from the earthquakes. I have some of them in our living room, and I was looking around and I thought, he did enjoy some of these, but really it wasn't very long in terms of his own life too, just as several decades that he was able to enjoy these beauty and the pottery and artwork that he collected. And now I get to enjoy, but then I thought, wow, I really need to spend some time just looking at these and the exquisiteness of these things, because it's really, I was reminded of this the very first session that I did with my Zen teacher. And, we've shared this with you before, but he gave me a sheet of paper that said, basically, life is short. It's basically you're on the edge of each breath. You're living and dying all day long. So really become aware of the dying process that we're all in right now. Nobody is basically on this earth birthing again right now. We birthed and we are dying. But in the dying process, we get to really live when you recognize that life is short. You don't want to squander the time that you have on this earth. You don't want to just sort of live. You really want to 100% be here, 100% present in this moment. So, this is why we often ask all of you to say, please don't multitask. Please don't have all kinds of gadgets around you. Really tune into even 1 hour per week that you are here. In the dying process, recognizing the living that is behind it. So that was another profound truth that I needed to be reminded of this weekend, especially Sunday. And asking and receiving for support once again became very important for me. And also connecting with my passion, but desires. And so I want you to take a moment and say, what are my desires? Maybe you have one. What is it that you're truly yearning for? If I were to sit across the table from you and we're sharing maybe a cup of tea with you, and I say, what are you really yearning for? What is your heart yearning for? What would be the answer? Because the word desire actually comes from the Latin word meaning away from your star. So you're gazing at the skies, you're gazing at the starry night, and you're yearning for something because you're away from your star. You're away from your planet. You're away from where you come from. So it means that your spirit, your source is calling on you, and your soul is also reaching for that spirit saying, I miss you. I want to be one with you. And this requires a sense of calmness, sense of stillness, sense of silence. Occasionally, we want to take that and ask yourself, what is my heart truly yearning for? So that I don't feel like I'm always away from my own star. That's something that I really felt over the weekend. And I've been meaning to do this one thing. And I've had this email open for close to 2 months. And I look at it every morning, and I muscle test myself. I tune into myself, and every day, not quite 80% there, but not quite. You shouldn't send this email yet. And I felt it this weekend that, okay, this is the time. This is the time that I return to my star and let my desire truly express itself. So this is a great time to ask and receive support and help. And fully knowing that this person that I will be reaching out to could say, no, I'm not interested in supporting you in this, or no, I have no idea what to do about that. I don't know, that could happen. But not to be fearful of that, because if I'm afraid of saying no or receiving no, then I'm blocked. I can't move forward in anything. So I'm just basically stuck in the mud. So allow those fears to go. It's okay. I mean, it's just 2-letter word, right? No, that's it. N-O. And that's something that Chris and I repeat to each other. Well, that person could just say the worst thing that person can say is no. So give that a try. Okay. If you have something that you've been desiring, reach for that star, because that star is calling back at you. It's actually trying to reach you also. And, one of the things that I really felt over the weekend was stop wasting our energy and our vibrations and our frequencies and precious heart center and in our physical metabolic rate to something that you say, well, we've always done it this way, and never question the status quo. Question and say, well, we've done it this way all the time, but has this shifted us? Has this really elevated who we are? Has this cultivated our future in a different ways? If the answer is no, then you may need to say, well, we've always done it this way, may not be the way that you want to continue to do it. So that's kind of something I wanted to bring up today. And the reason why I brought that up, we've always done it this way, is this really amazing nutrient that we're going to talk about today, and which is iodine. I purposely chose iodine because there's so many, antiviral protocols out there, and iodine is just kind of left to the side. Not a lot of people talk about it. I almost thought about, well, maybe I'll talk about vitamin D, because vitamin D is really important. But, that information is out there. And I might come back to talking about that next Monday, but I haven't decided. I'm just going to let my heart decide on that one. But I thought iodine is something that, we've always done it that way, meaning we haven't really addressed iodine. So why address it now? So I thought, let's bring it back and question that kind of a sentiment. So I will pause here for a moment before we move forward with the iodine, because we have a couple things we wanted to repeat or review actually about magnesium. So magnesium as well here. So Chris, you want to say something?
Well, do you want to jump into the magnesium first?
Yeah, we could. I brought a couple things. So this is from our bathroom. You can find this product on our resources page, and you can order it on Amazon, or you can write down the name and go to your local stores. But ancient minerals, that's what we use in our bathtubs. And when we take our baths, this is the magnesium flakes we use. And I do use Epsom salts as well. But Epsom salts can be a little bit drying to your skin. And when I use the flakes, these work a little bit better on your kidneys and actually liver also. And Epsom salt can have a really good impact on your kidneys, but the ancient minerals have, I would say, a little bit more impact on the liver detox side. So we use it, and it seems to really help with toxic buildups in your muscle tissues and different organ tissues as well. So this is what we use pretty much when we take the bath, which is quite often for us. And you want to talk about magnesium MGzyme? You want to mention that, Chris, please?
Yeah, so MGzyme is it is 3 forms of magnesium that are highly absorbable. And one of the reasons why it's formulated this way is because it is our bodies pick up different forms at different speeds, and some of us absorb one form better than another. But these are 3 forms that are very helpful to the body, easy to absorb, like I said: citrate, aspartate, and I'm forgetting the last one off the top of my head. I think it's malate. But magnesium, as we talked about in the previous week, is so important for relaxing the tension in your muscles. So those salts that Masami showed you, those are magnesium chloride. So we're doing a little bit of a chemistry lesson here. Magnesium chloride is not something that you want to take internally, because when it's internal, it's basically a salt. When it says chloride, it's a salt. And salt forms of most minerals, we don't really absorb that well inside of our bodies. But as a bath form, if you put magnesium chloride into the bath, you can actually absorb a fair amount of the magnesium through your skin, because the chloride helps it to pass through your skin. So magnesium chloride is great for soaking. It can be a spray-on application. And again, these are very helpful for resting, for calming your nervous system, for relaxing your muscles and the tissues of your body. So those are some key points I would say about magnesium.
And in the magnesium MGzyme, we do have this on our store. So if you want to read up, look at it, you can. And I really like this form, because I am one of those people that are, as many of you know, I'm a self-claimed or declared constipation queen, right? So as a constipation queen, that is the best form of magnesium for me. And I do switch it around. So that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure to repeat it again, is that there are about 26 known magnesium forms out there. So you don't want to get too stuck in one. Maybe try one for a month and then maybe switch it, or every other week. I mean, that would depend on who you are, what you want to do with it and what's coming up as symptoms. But I wanted to read a little bit about MG-zyme and what the MG-zyme that I use is good for. So one is great for someone like that I get constipated, but I have a very sensitive gut and very sensitive small intestine and a large intestine. So even though I'm constipated, if I take too much magnesium, it could be really loose. And there's like nothing in between, kind of, what that could happen to me. So I go a little bit at a time and make sure that I'm not getting too loose either. But it's great for PMS. It's great for inflammation, muscle cramps. And, you take them at the same time that we've been talking about, right? Away from food, before bed will be better. If you're doing first thing in the morning, you definitely want to let it go through your system for at least a half an hour or so. So it's no longer in your stomach, right? Muscle tissue injuries. If you have tissue injuries like pulled muscles or torn ligaments, things like that, the MG-zyme is great. Cardiac stress, asthma, renal, and gallstones. So this is great for, I would say any kind of stone forming things. And if you want to break down the calcium, this will be a good formula as well. And because it's a calcium synergist, right? We talked about that without magnesium, calcium doesn't get absorbed. And chronic fatigue, diabetes, hypoglycemia, but that orotate works well, and taurinate works really well as well for that. So it's not just the particular form that we are introducing today, but I have seen great things happen with people with diabetes or hypoglycemia for sure, and fibromyalgia. So those are some of the things that I wanted to talk about with the different kinds of magnesium, because since there are 26 different kinds that I have heard of, I don't know all of them. Now you have choices, right? And go with it, like play with it, right? So when you work with me one-on-one, I'm always teaching you to come home, playfulness with the supplements. Supplements are not medications, right? So don't get too rigid with supplements. Okay. And I think those are a couple of things I wanted to mention. Oh, and the spray too. You can do a magnesium spray. Yeah.
I wanted to add, if anybody's wondering if you are magnesium deficient, the odds are 3 out of 4 that the answer is yes. About 75% of the adult population is magnesium deficient. So if you're wondering about that, if you would benefit from it, the answer is almost certainly yes. So just think about that. And there's a question earlier in the chat about the orotate forms versus other ones. Again, this comes back down to a lot of individual factors. We talk a lot about bioindividuality. So each of us is different. Each of us has different rates of absorption, reasons why one might work better than another. So for example, if you're somebody that has gut issues that are known, if you have a lot of systemic inflammation, orotate might be an easier form for your body to absorb, just because it doesn't cause irritation to the lining of your small intestine. That's one reason. And another is because it can get through your cell from the outside to the inside a little bit more easily. So that's just maybe a final note as we move from that to iodine.
Okay. And then, I always forget everyone. I sent out 2 emails in the last week or so about one is a summit and one is a seminar that's coming up starting next week. So please look at that and sign up. Those are free. And I'm a speaker for both of those summits. The first one, they're both basically starts at the same time. But the first one is the journeying through the grief with grace. That one I'll be on August 31st. So please sign up for that if you can. And The next one is September 2nd with the Shift Network, Awakening with Spirit. And I'm extremely honored that they asked me, out of 20 people that they interview, they actually asked me to be one of them. And I was so incredibly honored. I did not know who were going to be the speakers. They don't tell you who's going to be on.
I was going to say that part.
I couldn't, you're going to say.
I was going to say that part because I'm really proud of Masami about this, because she didn't even realize until after she'd already done her session for this. They pre-record them. And so she didn't even realize that Joe Dispenza and Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson are also in this same summit of 20 speakers with Masami. So it's going to be a really good lineup, and it's great to see that not only the shift work is recognizing a diversity of views, but they're also valuing what Masami brings as a teacher to this platform. So please join. This is going to be a really good way to see some more of Masami in action.
Or Masami in calmness, I think, a little bit. And, you know, it's just, I put the Shift Network link on the chat for you. And then if you're listening to this on YouTube after, we will put the link there too. And then I will have Chris put the other one. But the what helps me the most is your comments, actually. You have no idea what your comments mean to me. When I read your comments, and I get all your comments, actually, the Shift or other summits I do, they send me the comments and I read them, and some of them have your names on them, some of them don't, but I kind of actually know who left what comments most of the time. I can intuit, and I just really appreciate that so much. So, you know, I think that's what you can do for all the people you follow and you support, is to sign up, but after you watch, have a bookend with it, you know? So I think bookends are so important. I talk about this in health too, but some kind of a beginning and an end. And if you watched it and you appreciated it or you liked it, please say something like that. I read every single comment, and it just makes me feel like, okay, I want to do this more. I want to go out there and reach out to more people. And when I don't receive that, it really, like, I become the flower that doesn't get watered that much. And I do dwindle a little and shrivel up. So that's one of the things I would love for you to do to help me. So thank you for that. And I will get the link, Chris, if you want. And if you want to get started on the iodine, which is one of our favorite topics.
So
we brought some goodies.
Iodine, here's a pop quiz. Okay, ready everyone? Let's test your knowledge. How many hormones in the body require iodine? Let's test the chat. So throw your answer into the chat if you've got something. Okay, how many hormones in our body require iodine? We got one guess, over 300. We have an all with a question, a little more confident, all, and then all of them, all. Okay, all right. We got some knowledge.
Oh, did I say that in my, Chris? I might have said that.
You might have already spilled
email.
Okay, I'm just testing who reads these emails now.
Okay, so okay, people are reading my emails. Okay, good. Yes, it's actually all.
That's the correct answer. All of the hormones in our bodies require iodine. That means that iodine is absolutely essential to life as we know it, life period. We wouldn't be alive without iodine. But how many of you think about taking iodine or making sure you eat enough iodine in your food? I see one hand. Thanks, Arlene. I think that's the only person that commented there. Oh, okay, we got another one. But my point is, iodine is not something we generally remember much. And in fact, we've gotten into a really bad situation in most countries these days, because in the production of food, it used to be that iodine was something that was added to flour, for example. and it was added as a nutrient. But then what happened is somewhere in the middle of the 20th century, people decided that bromine could be substituted. So if you know the periodic table of elements, bromine and iodine and fluoride and chlorine are all in the same line, meaning they react very similarly and they can take each other's places in chemical reactions. And so we got into the situation where iodine started to disappear from our food supply. So unless you're somebody who lives in a coastal area and eats a lot of fresh ocean fish, or you eat seaweed products, probably you're in the same boat of not getting a whole lot of iodine in your diet. And so some of the keys, I'm just going to make a couple of notes here, some high points. One is that we've talked about how iodine, I think we've talked about this on other calls even. It is antibacterial, it's antifungal, it's antiviral. It helps with reducing cancer tumors. It helps with alkalizing the pH in our bodies inside of the cells. And there's a whole list of medical conditions that it helps to reduce, including some of the big ones like atherosclerosis, which is the hardening of the arteries, fibrocystic breast disease, breast cancer, excess mucus production, fatigue, hemorrhoids, headaches, hypertension, liver disease, ovarian disease, prostate disorders, thyroid disorders, and the list goes on and on. So one of the things that's so interesting about it is one of the statistics that we came across in doing some reading for today, and this may not be totally common knowledge, but if you compare the diets of Japan and the United States, Japan is nearly 100 times more in their average consumption of iodine on a daily basis. So in the United States, the recommended daily intake is so small that you could miss it if you blinked. It's 150 micrograms, which is practically nothing. And probably technically, if you got 150 micrograms and you didn't move or blink or breathe or have any stress or have to digest or anything like that, it might be enough. But the fact is, we live in a busy world with a lot of stressors, and our bodies require a lot more than we think. So that number is a best case scenario, and it also doesn't include toxic exposures to heavy metals and things like that, which will also displace iodine from our bodies. And that's another huge factor. If you have mercury or lead or aluminum or copper even as an overload in your body, that can really disrupt what happens with iodine. So we have to make this a daily practice. It's very important that this becomes part of our regimens and that we really have a respect for it, that it is essential for not just being alive, but having a quality to being alive. So if you're somebody that has been prescribed with a any kind of, I mean, there's a whole list of medications that fall into this. Some of them are mood stabilizers, some very common ones, even some of the statins and things like that, like Lipitor, but even things like Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, Wellbutrin are some of the medications that are out there in large numbers, which are known to displace iodine from our bodies or help other things to replace it. Some other places you may not think about finding it have to do with sweeteners. So if you're one of these people who's like, oh, I don't eat sugar, I use Splenda all the time. Well, Splenda is one of the known factors that displaces iodine from your body.
So displace means pushes out, okay? That it pushes out your necessary iodine from your cells, okay? You don't want to be doing that, right? So these medications and then even the sweeteners and fluoride in your water. So this is why you want to make sure you are filtering your water. And maybe Chris can explain about the periodical charts or the halogens
Yeah, I didn't.
push out.
Yeah, I didn't pull that up in front of me to show you. But if you were to imagine, if you took even high school chemistry and you imagine the periodic table of elements, you'd see that there are these rows of different minerals and metals out there in the world. And so this one group that are called the halogens, like I said before, they react very similarly. So things like chlorine and bromine, fluoride, all of those things in our bodies can take the place of iodine. And so what will happen is if our bodies are low on iodine, which the odds are good that they are, any of those other elements can take the place in something like a thyroid hormone. And it may make it so that maybe it doesn't make it so the thyroid hormone doesn't work at all, but it might reduce its effectiveness by something like 80%. And it's not very stable. So it doesn't do a very good job of signaling how it's supposed to. And some of these things like chlorine or fluoride, we get them in the water. So if you have a municipal water treatment kind of option where you live, if you're on well water, it's different. You have to look a lot at the heavy metals particularly, but in cities, chlorine and fluoride are very common additives. And both of those will cause our bodies to lose iodine. And I can speak to the chlorine in particular from personal experience. I used to be in swimming pools all the time. And I can tell you that I ended up later in my life with thyroid challenges. And just being in that, around the chlorine gas, swimming in pools, working at pools when I was younger, I had a lot of exposure to it, and it can have a long-term effect. So that's another area to consider.
Yeah. And then I always, when I look at Olympics and then watch the swimmers, I'm always like, oh my gosh, I want to give them iodines. I want to work on their fungus and yeast. And, all kinds. I'm like worrying about them while they're getting the gold medals. That's just kind of how I work. But definitely like commercial breads and things, they put bromine in them. Used to be iodine as an anti-caking, but now they put bromine as an anti-caking for the breads. So this is why you do not want to eat, mass-produced breads, cookies, and things that are sold in the store either, because that's going to push your iodine. Then you're going to have all kinds of issues with your endocrine systems, right? If the thyroid's suffering, well, your adrenals are suffering also. And Richard actually brought up a really interesting point, which I was going to talk about, Richard. So it's perfect. We're on the same wavelength. I'm going to have Chris put this up, but there's this, it's so hard to read. So we'll put it on the chat, everyone. But it's called the iodine tincture 2% mild. It's made with Humco, and you could get this on Amazon, and it's like $6 or something like that. But it has old-fashioned iodine. Remember those days, everyone? I grew up that way, right? Super old-fashioned. This is actually a little stick, but you could get the one with the brush on it, or I had the ones that you could kind of put it on, orangey color things. Had a pretty bad smell to it normally when I was growing up. I kind of like it though. But anyway, so when you cut yourself or you did something, my mom would just put the iodine on. So you should always have this in your medicine cabinet, okay? But what Richard is talking about is that you can actually, this is a little bit of a old-fashioned way of testing yourself if you have enough iodine or not. So they do have iodine testing that it's a little bit fancier. You can go to your doctor and ask them, but it's called iodine loading test. And you actually up your iodine, and then basically you pee and then collect your urine and see how much of your iodine has come out. And that will basically determine whether you're iodine deficient or not. You can get a clear number with that. But you know me, I like to go a little more intuitive, and I like to do like something I can do at home. So what I did with this is I painted my arm. Can you see that? Okay. So it's about an inch and maybe, half an inch or something, or a little bit more of a square that I drew on my arm. You could do this on your inner thigh. You can even do it on your butt cheek too. Wherever you feel like you can access that it's easy. But what you do is, so this means I did this. So this means I can't shower tonight and scrub my body tonight, because you do not want to scrub your body after you do this. Okay. And I will have to report back to you next week. But you watch it and then you hope to God that this square or the rectangle shape stays there when you wake up tomorrow morning. Okay. Hopefully 24 hours, you can, it starts to fade, but you should be able to make out the box. Okay. But when I first started taking the iodine, when I first learned about this and I started doing this test, my iodine patch would disappear within 20 minutes, everyone. 20 minutes. It was ridiculous. So I was so low on iodine. No wonder I was a mess. I mean, I was a complete mess. I could not sustain my life at that point. So that's when I realized that I need to do this. And now this thing will stay like this for a good, I would say 19 to 20 hours now. So I'm in good shape. But you want to draw the, orangey square or rectangle shape and put it, liberally. Okay. And then see what happens to that. I know it's not so scientific. Okay. But it's an old-fashioned way for you to get to know, if you don't have maybe the finance to go see the doctor to do this extra test, or you don't have anybody that that can test this, you can get this $6 on Amazon. Draw a square or rectangle shape and then test yourself. Then what I did was I started with just the full dropper of iodine, which is what, 100, what's the milligrams and micrograms in that? 1,500, right?
Okay. Yeah. Per drop, it's about 150
milligrams. No,
micrograms
per drop. Yeah, that's right. So micrograms. So I started to take anywhere from 10 to 15 drops in my water first thing in the morning. And I would just let it sit in my mouth. And I just started really slowly, and I would check this once a month. And it took a long time for me to build up. One, probably because I wasn't doing it enough. Okay. And then eventually I got to the point that I started to take tablet forms. And I want Chris to talk a little bit about the tablet forms as well. Can you talk about the iodine?
Yeah.
And then Cheryl asked earlier, what's the difference, iodine versus iodide?
That's
so
what
maybe
the tablet form conversation is. So
yeah.
So iodine versus iodide, you'll see both of these, and they're both important in the body. And so what you need to remember is that iodine, when it has an N, iodine, that's the one that is the antimicrobial. So it's antifungal, antiviral, antibacterial. So that one interacts with organic substances inside of our bodies and it breaks them down. So the foreign invaders. So it's very, very helpful for our immune system and for assisting in that response. So that's iodine. And then iodide, the difference between these, again, we have to talk about chemistry if we're really going to mention this, but if you can imagine a nucleus and a bunch of little flies flying around it that are electrons that are circling around it, the iodine has one electron missing. And so it makes it able to combine with other substances, whereas the iodide has all of its electrons. And so that allows it to become a key ingredient in hormones, particularly thyroid hormone. So there are two forms and you need them both, but they do different things in your body. And that's what's important to remember. Iodide with a D, two Ds, iodide is the one for making hormones, particularly thyroid hormone. And iodine is the one that's the antimicrobial. And that's the one that we use to sterilize wounds and do things like that. That's actually, I've got my little tincture bottle here too. That's the same one that Masami just demonstrated with. And they can both be taken internally, but you have to be careful about the form of the iodine. So the ones that are meant to be taken internally are, some of them are yellow, like have this kind of yellowish color, but you need to make sure that the product that you have says that it is safe for internal use, because there are forms of iodine that are not. So that's why the ones that we have listed on the website, we have a liquid form which is, let's see, is the liquid form. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. That one is, they both have
Iodine, potassium, right? Is that what you mean?
potassium iodide is
Yeah,
what
potassium iodine,
died,
dying,
died with a D. Yeah.
died. Yeah.
So that one is going to be more for the hormonal composition. And then the one that we have, which is a high potency, which will help get you up to Japanese levels, if that's your intent. You can use that one to help get there. But that one has a combination. So you'll have some iodine and some iodide both. So they're both helpful.
So I started personally just with like a maybe full dropper per day. I did that for a while. I kept testing myself. I was fatigued all the time. So I thought maybe I should do a little bit more. By then, Chris was already being diagnosed with hypothyroidism. So he was starting to take the tablet form. But even the tablet form, you may want to just start with a half a tablet. You can break it off in half. And the ones that we use already have a line. So it's easy to break off. But if you have pill cutters or something, you could cut them in half and just take a half a tablet per day and see, what you're looking for is, for me, was energy. For me was concentration. Can I have a focus with it? Did I, my hips were always hurting. My alignments were always off because my adrenals were just so fatigued from not having enough iodine either. And then doing the arm test regularly to make sure. And now it's definitely built up. And iodine, when I was growing up in Japan, old grandmothers are always actually maybe a little older, but let's say grandmothers that were like in their 80s and 90s. They used to say to me, if you want to have a really luscious black hair like us, you got to take iodine and you got to eat the seaweeds, is what they always said to us. And I thought, well, I have a strawberry blonde curly hair, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. I remember thinking that as a kid too. It's like, I'm not quite sure I'm going to have a straight black hair. But what they were trying to say to us is that if you want to have healthy hair, you've got to take iodine or, basically eat a lot of seaweeds. But the problem is, right, is that I ate a lot of fish growing up. And I grew up in a part of this country in Japan where this island had mercury spill that went on for 25 years. So when I did the hair tissue mineral analysis, I had never seen the mercury level that high on anyone. I had the highest mercury ever that I've ever seen in any clients I worked with. So that meant that I needed to detoxify mercury, and iodine actually gets used up for detoxing heavy metals as well. So, so I needed to do one thing first, which is to, before, you begin to start adding iodine, a lot of people say, just tell me what to add, tell me what to take. Well, you know what you might want to do is like, what are some of the things that's pulling my iodine away and adding fluoride and bromine and bromine and some other toxic halogens back into your system. Remove those things first. Does that make sense? I hope I'm making sense. A lot of people want to go, how do I detox? How do I do this? How do I take, how do I take this supplements? I want to say, okay, back off a little bit. What can you do to lessen the burden of your stress level in your body, toxic level in your body? So number one, stop buying the commercial breads, right? Start filtering your water. If you have a swimming pool that you often go and swim, check out and make sure they don't add chloride in it or fluoride. And make sure if you have a hot tub or something, get the kinds that you don't add chemicals into it. Maybe you start to do more of a saltwater based stuff, things like that you got to change. And what's your toothpaste like? What are you using, right? So if you're, I always talk about my toothpaste here and there, but you can check out what toothpaste we use on our resources page. So I'm not going to go into it right now, but certainly no fluoride in our toothpaste, and we haven't used that for a long, long, long time. So, but it takes time to release. It takes time to shift your body. So it isn't just about adding more things to you. Remove the burdens out of you. Okay.
I wanted to add that the liquid iodine that we have on the website is something you can take just a drop or two under your tongue and just take it that way. That's a very simple way. You can also put it into drinking water. That's something that I do regularly. I have it in my glass of water right now. And I've gotten in the habit of taking iodine frequently, and it's been very helpful for me. And I can say right now, just in the context of COVID, with everything else that's going on, there was a Dr. David Brownstein. We were just flipping through one of his books last night, and he talked about, he wrote a whole book about iodine, but one that he wrote recently about viruses, he mentions this again. It's a study that was done last year where they, in one lab, they isolated the coronavirus. Is basically in a test tube, and then they exposed it to a 1 to 5% iodine solution, and it actually neutralized it. So one of the things that they're also seeing is that from, a biological standpoint, iodine is one of the few things that things like bacteria and viruses, they just don't really have defenses against it. So when we have enough of it in our bodies, it really, really helps with our immune function and our ability to just, naturally counter if we have, an infection, or if they're working on infecting us. So.
And I wanted to kind of go back to Richard had a 2 parts comment that was really important. I have actually used iodine directly on people's goiters. So not the orangey kind. Okay. You could do that in the winter time, but you could do the liquid iodine directly on your goiter. Also, I have people use the liquid iodine directly onto their fibroids, like hardened tissues and things like that as well. So you can actually absorb iodine directly through the skin. So that might be a good way to do it. This is just on the side note, and I know this is getting recorded. I probably shouldn't, but when I do coffee enema, sometimes I add little iodine to it. Okay. So that I absorb the iodine through, where. Okay. So coffee enema, we'll talk about it someday. Someday I will share, but without any videos with it or anything, but I will explain what the coffee enema that I do. Okay. Anything else that we need to, I think questions like the one about the milk is a good question. I'm hoping that the milk is maybe for your kid or something. I have issues with cow milk. So, you really want to make sure you're not drinking cow's milk. And if you want to add a little iodine to it, sure. I don't think it'll even taste, you probably won't taste much of iodine from it. That's fine. I just hope that you're not drinking so much cow's milk. And I say to parents that after about age 12, you really need to start thinking about whether you should be giving a child a glass of cow's milk or not. But that's, you want to kind of think about that and assess this based on what you research. Okay.
Yeah, there's a question about thyroid tests, and that the question is, do the allopathic medicine, does it not necessarily detect low thyroid because their low range is too high? That's something that there's been a fair amount of discussion about, apart from our format here. But there's some disagreement out there about the original study that was done to establish the index for thyroid testing, because they didn't screen for people who are already hypothyroid. So there's some sign that the range is actually too high. The normal range is actually skewing toward people with hypothyroidism. So that means that you'll show up with, if your TSH number is, I don't know, let's say like 4 or something like that, they'll say, well, you're fine. That's good. But they didn't really separate out healthy people from people that had a hypothyroid condition when they did that test study decades ago. So there is some truth to that. And then there were a couple of questions we saw earlier.
I wanted to actually comment about the lake fish too. Be very, very careful about eating lake fish. I mean, it's kind of sad right now. We can't really eat a lot of fish or water-based protein anymore because it's just so toxic. And I lived in the northern part of Minnesota, Boundary Waters. So I lived actually almost 2 hours north of Duluth, Minnesota is where I lived. And some of these fish, I mean, they had like 3 eyes on them. So I don't know. I don't know about that, So I would muscle test the lake fish these days. And I kind of get no on lake fish these days. So I do not touch anything that we used to catch, and I used to eat them, and I wouldn't even touch lake fish.
Part of the reason for that is that we still have a lot of coal-fired electrical plants, and coal has a very high mercury level. So there's a lot of mercury that's getting dissolved into our fresh water. So there's the EPA did a study in the US, I think it was just even last year, but they put out a report that estimated that 100% of the fresh water in the US is contaminated with mercury and other metals. And that's where a lot of it comes from. Car pollution, just city pollution, car exhaust, all of those things get into the air and then they dissolve into water. So, and then the water gets into the soil or into the animals or the fish, and then it gets into us. So we've got to be just cognizant.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm reading the chat and it's like, it's charfish. Okay. I have absolutely no idea. I don't know. I think you really want to do some studies on these days, just about anything you eat. So, and not knowing what your heavy metal level is, it's hard to say. Maybe some people can eat it now and they still can build up the heavy metals for a while. But for me, I can't touch it. I walk by most fish now, and Chris has seen this in the store. I literally feel like I'm about to have rashes all over me. Like, I will walk away from the fish. You've seen that, right, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not good for me. I energetically cannot eat tunas and all that. And I don't eat king salmon. Even sockeye salmon starting to get wishy-washy for me.
Can I just say one thing just generally? There were a lot of questions today in the chat, and we weren't able to get to more than just a handful of them today. But I want to just reiterate that the reason that we're talking about these things is because you have to remember everything comes back to the basics. Every time, whatever we're talking about, whatever situation we're talking about, for each one of us, if we're not supporting the foundations of how our bodies work, then we're going to be struggling, because we're going to be fighting against what naturally wants to happen. So these things that we're recommending, we can come up with endless questions about, should I eat this? Should I not eat that? That's going to always have it depends as an answer to some degree. But what we do know is when we're able to support the basic functions of our bodies, whatever we do is going to work better. So we can start with that really simple approach. And instead of trying to answer every question, let's just know that if we start there and we focus there, in some ways we don't have to worry as much, because we're not in control of everything, and we don't need to micromanage down to the molecular and atomic level of what's entering our bodies. Okay, but we can support the functioning of our bodies to get rid of things that it can't use and are harmful. That's the part we can work on. So for all of those of you that had foot bath questions about salts, yes, you can just put that magnesium chloride in a foot bath and it will still be nice. You'll still absorb some of it.
And then, yes, this test will give you a sense of, okay, do I have a balanced iodide and iodine in me? Yes.
It's kind of the question that arm test is answering is, do I need iodine? It's not telling you how much, it's just telling you if you have a relative deficiency. Okay.
And you can almost assume that almost all of us are not eating buckets of seaweeds. There are no mercury in it, no toxins in it, right? So you could probably assume that you need iodine of some kind and iodide, right? And I think, like I said early on, let's focus a little bit less on how many milligrams of this and how much of this, and is this good for me? Is this not good for me? That kind of questions are impossible for me to answer in this kind of setting. I'm sure you can recognize that, right? If you need that level of yes and no, you do need to work with me one-on-one. I am always happy to answer any of those questions in that session. However, what you can get started on is, what can I do to lessen the load of this toxic stuff that's coming into me? So like I said, if you have a hot tub that uses chemicals, look into some other ways to take the hot tubs, okay, to soak in the hot tubs. Do you have water that is filtered? Make sure that's filtered so you don't have fluoride. Are you still using Crest and what is it? What's the other one? Colgate. Colgate's one of the worst. Do you use whitening toothpaste? Get rid of them. Okay. You don't need them. Your teeth are pearly enough. Okay. So get rid of them. Get the real kind, as in the ones we use are called the Revitin. You can look at the ones that we use and we've been using for a long time. And then you need to look at, I better stop using commercial breads and cookies and baked goods from a grocery store because they have no iodine in it. It's stripped of it and it's going to remove the iodine from your body, right? And then if you use Splenda, stop using it, period. And if you are on medications that we've mentioned, Zoloft and Wellbutrin and some other, medications, they have this thing called chlorine in it. And that's going to push the iodine away. So you will need iodine. You will want to supplement yourself with iodine, right? We're not doctors. We can't tell you to come off of these medications. But what we can tell you is that that's pushing your iodine away. And we would recommend you take iodine. Okay, so that's how I want you guys to use these Monday calls. Not so much about, is this good for me? Is this that? Yes and no, because part of me sometimes feel like I'm not a yes and no machine, everyone. Okay. I'm here to educate all of you. I am here to empower you. And if you're looking for just give me yes and no, then it's not probably the right Monday calls to show up. Okay. Maybe find another one that just gives you black and white, black and white, black and white. I don't know. I need to know just about everything about you in order to give you yes and no and be in the presence of you. And this is why my first session, as many of you know, is almost 2 hours. 101 session is almost 2 hours because I want to know so much about you and get to know you so deeply that I can support you directly, right? So use these Monday calls as a little bit more of like, oh, that's intriguing. Let me go research this. That's interesting. Let me read up on this. Okay. And we will continue this because iodine is such a giant topic. We're not going to be done with it. Okay. We'll definitely bring it up possibly next week. And then we'll do follow-ups as well. Okay. So just get started with maybe testing it. Just get started with eliminating things that are toxic to your system. Okay.
Final comment from me is if you have any kind of known medical condition with your thyroid, like Hashimoto's or something that is interactive with iodine that you could have a reaction to, then you need to really proceed with caution because you could tip the balance in your body very easily. And you definitely would want to get yourself tested in a medical setting and get some advice from a physician so that you can do this in a much more controlled way. And you don't want to just be freelancing iodine testing if you have that type of sensitivity. So there's that. And then for all of you who had questions about minerals and water.
Oh yeah. So shellfish, allergies, don't do the testing, everyone. Don't do the
shellfish
testing.
Allergies cross link in your body. The signaling gets mixed up with iodine. So if you have that allergy, that's another reason to be very, very cautious with iodine use, even though our bodies need it. Okay. So you might have a different way that it gets processed. And I just wanted to say, minerals belong in water. If you drink spring water, there are always minerals in it. So when we talk about pure water, any of these little things that if we've filtered our water and we're adding minerals back to it, it's still, those are components of pure water. So somebody asked that question earlier.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to.
Yes. Good. I'm glad you're seeing them. They're coming in so fast. I didn't see. Well, thank you, everyone. Yeah. And then you're welcome. Okay. We'll continue. Remember, if you go to our homepage, it says become the expert of you. I'm interested in you becoming the expert of you. Okay. All right. We'll see you next Monday. Everyone, we love you.